We now know the Pac-12 is scrambling because USC and UCLA have announced that they are leaving for the Big Ten. And in the wake of that, we now have rumors that Oregon, Washington, Arizona State could also be looking for new homes, whether it be the Big 12, the Big 10. I've even heard the SEC, which sounds ridiculous, but who knows? Ridiculous seems to be just the flavor of college sports right now. So who knows like whether that's actually like legit or not. But it does but here's the trickle down. UCLA and USC leave. The Pac-12 can't not do anything. They're losing the LA market. How do they replenish that resource? How do they combat that the fact that they're losing that? Well, the obvious option is expansion. But then it's like, okay, then who? Who else could you how else do you replace the LA market? Well, the simple answer is you can't because there is no duplicate to the LA market. You might have similar, like you have to cobble multiple pieces together to be able to replicate LA because there is no replacing LA. But if you're the Pac-12, you're also kind of geographically constrained. You're not going to go any further east than Colorado, which is again your furthest east team. So if I'm even just including that moving from Colorado and then heading west, what do I have? Who do I have to choose from? New Mexico, UNLV, Nevada, San Diego State, Boise. None of them really scream Pac-12 to me. And it would also not even just on an athletic front, because I think eventually like a team like San Diego State would be able to kind of level themselves up enough to be able to compete across their sports. But they also have an academic hurdle that the Pac-12 has upheld for its entire existence. The research institutions, they have not included state schools in this conference. This is just a philosophical conversation that the Pac-12 is beginning to have with itself about to what extent will they break that mold, and to what extent will they be okay accepting a school that doesn't quite fit doesn't quite fit what they used to have or all what the rest of the schools are. And then, of course, what happens if someone else leaves? Because if one of them leaves, they're likely going to put if one of those other teams leaves, the natural thing to me, at least in my mind, would be let's poach the Mountain West. And if we're going to poach the Mountain West, who is the Mountain West going to poach from? Mountain West might poach from the WCC. They might poach from the WAC. Now, the Mountain West still does care about football. So that might eliminate the WCC schools, at least in the interim, because let's look for football first. But as some of these other conferences, the SEC, the Big Ten, maybe even the Big 12, uh, become the super conference as they continue to add and add and add and add. It makes the situation more precarious for the likes of the WCC schools, the ones who are basketball first. Because as we know, football is driving the ship. Football is driving the car. And basketball, unfortunately, is like basketball's not even in the back seat. Basketball is in the trunk. And as these other schools start to make moves, what should some WCC schools start to do? Because let's say, and Gonzaga is obviously the most attractive of the options to bounce, look for another home, and get an invite to somewhere else, because The brand is incredibly valuable on a basketball front. So, of course, that's why the Big East was an option. They're a basketball first conference, despite the distance between between Spokane and the next closest Big East school. It makes every bit of sense other than the distance. So let's say, in the hypothetical, Gonzaga leaves. If you're St. Mary's, if I'm St. Mary's, let's do it this way. If I am St. Mary's and Gonzaga leaves, I am looking for the door very quickly. I'm already on the phone to the Mountain West. And here's why. I know there will be some WCC traditionalists who says like, oh, we could stay put, we'll be fine. Here's why it wouldn't be fine to stay. We already know BYU is leaving. That's 2 top 50 games a year that are walking out the door. We already know Gonzaga. Well, so in this scenario, Gonzaga is also walking out the door. That's 2 top 10 games that are walking out the door. If I stay, I can dominate the conference potentially, likely. The way this team is put together, the way it is coached right now, with the prospects and the talent that this team has right now. But with BYU leaving, and then Gonzaga also packing up and taking its act elsewhere, when you go out to recruit, you can no longer say, I have BYU twice on my schedule and I have Gonzaga twice on my schedule. That's gone. When the WCC goes to negotiate its TV contract, the two biggest draws are gone. The ability to recruit will become harder. The ability to schedule tougher games becomes tougher. The ability to say that we're competing on a high level because we play in a higher level conference. You can't say that anymore. The danger here is that if St. Mary's stays put, in the event that Gonzaga leaves in addition to BYU, what I don't want to have happen, what I think would happen, is that St. Mary's would slide back and we would become Vermont. No disrespect to Vermont in any way when I say this, but we could sit in a WCC that consists of, at this point, it would be St. Mary's WCC opponents would be USF, Santa Clara, Portland, Pacific, LMU, Pepperdine, San Diego. I think that was the one I missed. Those teams are more similar. The remaining teams are more similar to that of the America East teams than that of the Mountain West. So that's why it's like, if Gonzaga were to leave, if I'm St. Mary's, I'm on the phone to the Mountain West looking for an invite, because we need a new home that can get us back, that can put us in a good position for strong games on a regular basis and still keep us competitive on a national front in recruiting, in TV money, and put us in a position to be an NCAA tournament team year in, year out. And the Mountain West, considering the location of St. Mary's, makes the most sense. Crazy idea, like, all right, let's go ahead and actually ask Gonzaga, hey, can we come with you and go to the Big East? In the unlikely event of that, I'm saying like Mountain West, Mountain West, Mountain West, Mountain West, because I don't see how it doesn't make sense for us to do anything else other than to try to make that a reality. That I it's it's a little it is a little terrifying, a little intimidating to think that Gonzaga basically is going to control the fate of the entire conference, one way or the other, whether what they decide to do. And then St. Mary's needs to decide what it wants to do, because again, we have yet to see any of the other conference schools consistently be in the conversation. USF and Santa Clara this past season had their best years in a long, long time. First tournament bid for USF in, what was it, 14 years? No, sorry, 24 years. Excuse me, 24 years. Santa Clara gets back to the NIT. Great. Absolutely incredible for both of those programs. Huge steps for them. But what about next year? Will they be consistent? Will they keep it up? I don't know. I don't have that strong a conviction to say like, oh yeah, USF will be back in the NCAA tournament next year. I actually don't think that's a thing. I think that it'll take them a couple of years to get back to that level, if they get back to that level. Santa Clara, I mean, you lose a guy like Jalen Williams, and it's going to be tough. I'm not saying that's not possible, but you lost an NBA guy, and those, for if you're in college and especially at the level of the WCC, those guys don't grow on trees. And then you look at the rest of the conference. I'm like, yes, Portland has done an incredible job in year one under Shante Legans. We've seen San Diego. San Diego's going to be interesting with Steve Lavin at the helm. I'm interested to just see how that team starts to gel together as he started to actually bring in some pretty legit recruits onto that team, and I think they're going to be far more exciting than they have been in a while. But then there's a lot of uphill climbs for the Pepperdines, for Pacific. This is not going to be an easy road for those teams, because the BYU leaving is already going to put a dent in the armor of the WCC. And with the rumors of maybe Gonzaga is going to follow suit, makes the situation far more precarious for everybody else. And if I'm any one of these teams, like, I'm starting to think about what's next. What's the scenario? What is my break in case of emergency kit look like in the event of Gonzaga leave, or the event, like, hell, if I'm USF, like, what if St. Mary's leaves and Gonzaga leaves? Like, again, right now, nothing's happening. This is all hyperbole. I'm shooting stuff out of my ass. Like, there's nothing moving at this moment. There's a TV contract in place. Gonzaga's probably not going to go anywhere until a new one is agreed upon or not agreed upon. And they're going to be probably another set of negotiations to see what else Gonzaga could get out of their deal to sweeten the pot from the WCC. There's still the conversation of, should the WCC expand to try to replace BYU? I think that's still a legitimate thing to have a conversation about, because I think you have to try to do something. Trying to stand pat with the teams you have is only okay if USF and Santa Clara, who are the teams right now who seem to be on the precipice, Portland as well, to maybe make that next leap.